Eventually, it got a little desperate. I was pointing out, like, hey, why don't you give me a probability of what is the percent likelihood that Jem is doing this because she is attractive? And um, Haiku could not give me a probability, and I called it in a lie. I was like, early on, you just said it's probably not it. And now you're saying you can't give me a probability. It apologized and admitted to nudging me towards certain conclusions. Hello, and welcome to the Artificial Developer Intelligence Podcast, a conversation show where two software engineers talk about the impact of AI on programming. We are also the initial sponsors for the Poddy Awards, the award for podcasts most listened to by AI. I am Shimin Zhang, and with me today is my co-host, Rahul. He's got a throughput of 17,000 tokens per second. Yadav, how are you doing today, Rahul?
I'm good. Yeah, busy week. How are you, Shimin?
Good. Less busy than you, certainly, but can't complain here.
Yeah.
On today's show, we're gonna talk a little bit about the news. We have a couple of new models and some interesting hardware coming up. After that, we'll have a post-processing where we're gonna talk about whether or not software is dead. After that, we will do a deep dive on the future of software engineering. I'm very excited for that, from the signers of the Agile Manifesto. And then we'll do a little vibe and tell where I try to convince an AI that the earth is flat. And as always, we're going to finish with 2 minutes to midnight. We're going to, as always, talk about where we are in the state of the AI bubble. So let us get started. First up, last week, we have the announcement of a few models, actually, but we first have the announcement of Sonnet 4.6 from Anthropic. Sonnet has the same much lower $3, up 15 down per million tokens price, but it is, according to Anthropic at least, a Opus-level reasoning model. Sonnet 4.6 is known for being trained to have computer use as its built-in, I guess, feature, where it performs significantly better than Sonnet 4.5, according to Anthropic, scoring a eye-dropping 72.5 on the OS world model, where essentially a model is tasked to do white-collar work using a computer, whereas Sonnet 4.5 only scored of 61.4. What is mostly surprising to me when it comes to Anthropic's own benchmark is that Sonnet 4.6 actually scores better than even Opus 4.6 when it comes to agentic financial analysis and office tasks, even though it is a significantly cheaper model. I have used Sonnet 4.6 a little bit this week. It's pretty good. I can tell it is, it's significantly better than Sonnet 4.5, but I can't really tell if it's better or worse than Opus 4.5. So I guess we've gotten to that point where it is actually kind of hard to tell model power apart from each other. Yeah. Rahul, have you had a chance to look at Sonnet 4.6?
I was playing around with Opus, not Sonnet. It is interesting, like what you called out. Older optimized model is outperforming the newer model. Not in like, obviously they're saying it's got better speed, lower costs and everything. And all of those costs at least like is downstream of training and all that. But also like Opus is supposed to be smarter and better at these things, but somehow optimized Sonnet is killing it in most of the fronts as you have it up here. So it's just interesting. And then timing is also interesting because like Opus 4.6 didn't come out that long ago, and then Sonnet 4.6 followed pretty quickly after that.
Right. So almost makes you wonder if they were training Opus 4.6 and Sonnet 4.6 at the same time. I think that was the rumor. The rumor was they were going to release both of those models at the same time, but something went wrong with the Sonnet model, and it took the whole service down for a little bit, and they just decided to delay it until this week. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. In other model news, we also have Gemini 3.1 Pro, but I'm just going to mention it because I haven't got a chance to try it yet. All the experiments I've done this week have been on just regular Gemini 3. So stay tuned.
We should, just as an aside, we should, every time these things are released, they should give like people specific prompts or tests to be like, and this is how you can tell this is better than the previous one.
Yeah, that's a great idea. They should show us the work and not just give us these numbers, because the numbers aren't that useful.
The lay people just need a couple of sentences to, for 3.1 to prove that it's smarter than 3. Otherwise, there is no reason for us to go to 3.1.
That's a great idea. We should write to Alphabet's marketing department or deep research.
Dear Sundar, I have some concerns.
No, you should start with, hey, bro. All right. The second piece of news we have this week is from Taalas Labs. They've released their latest hardware that uses FPGA to create a much faster throughput rate for their models. So this was the 17,000 tokens per second per user rate I mentioned earlier in the show. It is shockingly fast, right? Compared to, a couple of dozen, 100 tokens per second that we see with Opus 45 or 46. To be fair, this custom hardware is designed to run the Llama 3.1 AB model, so it's a relatively small model. But let's not even just talk about it. Let's just go into the demo real quick. Here, I pulled up their demo site for Chat Jimmy, and I'm gonna ask Chat Jimmy to tell me about samurais in the 16th century. And the page, and it generated
Awesome.
the entire response, essentially in less than 1/10 of a second.
Yeah.
At a throughput rate of 15,000 tokens per second. I know it's a small model, but
It's still impressive. Yeah.
It's like the bulk of the response time is spent, going from my computer to the Wi-Fi and doing the round trip to their server rather than the model itself.
Yeah.
Right? I want to talk about this because this is clearly going to be the future of hardware. I think, NVIDIA, if I was NVIDIA, I'd be pretty nervous right now. Folks are coming to their monopoly. The future of large language models is clearly custom hardware that is fine-tuned to a specific model. Maybe it's a couple of years down the line, but at least on the inference side, if you're building today, you probably should be building for a world where model throughput is not an issue.
This is one thing that my mind goes to on reading this is there's this other idea of like, you would have AI at the edge, and our phones and all the other hardware would also have better hardware that can run a lot of models locally. And then like you can't beat that latency if you're just running it locally. And so their approach, what I'm trying to figure out is, does it also work in that world where you can have model specific hardware at the edge, or are you trying to pack too much then? Or is like a mostly a win when you're in the cloud and you're trying to like tie things specific to the models and everything?
Yeah, that's a great observation. Would something like this be in, the Apple Silicon 2-3 generations from now? Will there
Exactly.
be a good enough model for that use case?
Yep.
I guess it really depends on what a good enough model is, doesn't it? Like this AB model probably isn't all that useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a kind of a follow-up news is OpenAI has also decided to start running their own GPT-5.3 codecs on custom chips from Cerebus. And these models are producing at 1,000 tokens per second. It is no 17,000 tokens per second. That clearly seems to be where things are going.
Live demo? They don't have one?
They don't have a live demo.
No Chat Jimmy.
I love Chat Jimmy. Everyone should check it out. When you have such a step up in performance, there's no convincing like a demo.
Yeah.
That's also, it's interesting, right? Like Google has its own TPUs.
Yep.
Amazon has its own Trainiums.
Trainium.
Microsoft has Maya, and now OpenAI is also partnering for its own hardware.
Yep.
But again, this is not 2 minutes to midnight, but if I was NVIDIA, I would be pretty nervous right now.
Is that the theme today? Every article you're like, I was NVIDIA, or you should go the Dario path. I'm not going to name names, but if I were some of the companies, I would be very
Yeah.
concerned.
If I was trading a 47 PE, I would be really thinking twice. Oh, and
Yeah.
of course, the last piece of news that just came out was today, Meta has a partnership with AMD for their chips, and Meta is going to
Interesting.
buy up to 10% of AMD for their own custom GPUs. So again, if I was a GPU manufacturer that starts with N and rhymes with Cascadia, I would be worried. Moving on. I'm gonna do a little different today. We're gonna go straight to post-processing. And here we have a post from Learning by Shipping, Steven Sinofsky, about the death of software. Nah. This is yet another piece that comments on the great SaaS sell-off and this theory that there's no longer a moat for SaaS companies and everyone's just going to use AI for all the things, and arguing against that thesis. I think as developers, one of the things we worry about intrinsically is, our job security if software goes away. So it's comforting to read a well-reasoned argument for going to the past, seeing how the old technological advances have impacted, have made impact, and how long those impact took to unfold. Stephen made a few arguments. Starts with looking at the PC and the GUI. Even though everyone saw GUIs and saw the PC and predicted the death of the mainframe and the death of data centers, the opposite actually happened, right? Mainframe computers might be dead, but data centers grew along with the PC. And even though we had GUIs, everyone still uses command line all the time. I work almost exclusively on the command line. So just because a quote unquote better interface comes along doesn't mean that the old one will be replaced. The old one might realistically be built upon or be exclusively used by the quote unquote power users or quote unquote expert users, right? And that is something that the software's dead crowd has kind of not taken into account. Then, and I thankfully was not old enough in 1995 to hear the talks of retail brick and mortar is dead slogan, but maybe Stephen was. He talked about how back in 1995, folks had already talked about how low margin, inefficient retail world would be subsumed by new fangled e-commerce companies like Amazon. And in fact, that is not the case, right? Not only did it took more than 30 years for this to play out, it is still playing out. We still have Walmart, we still have Costco's. Transitions probably take longer than you think. And if I was listening to the, I was gonna say ramblings, no, the speeches of a certain CEO from a certain human-themed company talking about what's gonna happen in the next 12 to 18 months, I may point out that it took Amazon 2 decades to quote unquote kill retail. Yeah, and then the third one, and this one is the least, I think, convincing of the argument, was that folks talk about the death of media since 2000. Time Warner and AOL merger proven to be premature. Only now did we start to see internet media companies like Netflix generating their own content. So that was another, it probably ended up taking 20 years. And that was built on the backs of DVDs. So just again, technological diffusion probably will take longer than the soothsayers would claim. And what does that mean for us, right? And here Stephen makes a couple of predictions. One, there'll be more software than before. I think that's pretty much a given. Two, AI-enabled or AI-centric software will move up the stack of what a product is. So AI becomes an additional feature, an additional layer of user interface. Three, new tools will be created with AI that do new things, definitely, because it opens up a whole new class of products. Four, domain expertise will be wildly more important than it is today because every domain will be vastly more sophisticated than it is now. This one is interesting. He talks about how in 1995, bankers hired like juniors to do the quote unquote Excel, low level Excel work for them. And now knowing Excel like the back of your hand is a prerequisite for being a banker.
One This point stood out to me. There was a quote recently someone had, because Claude had released those legal plugins and all that, and the whole like lawyer industry was in chaos. And then one person was like, "This is actually great because if every person who has a subscription to ChatGPT or whatever is an armchair expert in like legal stuff, they come up with more questions. I bill
Yeah.
by the hour. So if they come up to me with 50 questions instead of 5 before because they didn't know anything, I get to bill them for more questions, right? And so a lot of these
Right.
like same like doctors I don't think they usually bill by the hour, but you can see this happening in like consultancy legal as he calls out, is like if you're gonna have opinions on things and you want the person who's billing you to like give you their thoughts on it, they're gonna bill you on it.
Yep.
Talk to your personal chatbot all you want. They'll love it. You're generating more work for them, more
Yeah,
revenue.
this is Jevons paradox again, right? The idea that as technology gets more efficient,
Yeah,
actually you will need more people
more. Yeah.
to do the same task rather than less, because the tasks now is more democratized and there's going to be significantly more demand unlocked by that task. We'll see if that's true for software, but I could definitely see, if everyone is vibe coding their own personal productivity app or whatnot, they may actually need more developers come in to help them to re-architect things and to figure out bugs. Maybe it's only half an hour, 45 minutes of work, but there sure will be a lot more folks who need that. And lastly, finally, it's absolutely true that some companies will not make it. And I think that point is, yeah, it's a given, right? The companies who do not adopt the tool effectively, efficiently, with sufficient guardrails, or are too slow to adopt, will definitely not make it. And he closed the article with strap in. This is the most exciting time for business and technology ever. And I believe I mentioned the same thing to you 2 weeks ago. When we saw each other in person.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just what a time to be alive.
Yeah. Since we mentioned Netflix earlier, one thing I was thinking about is we see this more and more now where you mentioned to-do list or whatever. We don't need to. Why should a person go and buy a to-do list subscription when they can have a very specific to-do list, crafted, like software crafted to themselves, at least in their local machine, all that. So like
Yep.
personalized software, right?
Yep.
There's I was thinking about the Netflix version of that, where Netflix catalog, we probably watched like 1% of it. Because like one of the
Hmm.
things Netflix and Spotify and all of them offer is like, you get millions of these, and you're like, great, but it will take me millions of years to watch these, and unfortunately, I'm not gonna live that long. And so there could be a world in the future where people are generating personalized movies and TV shows and everything,
Hmm.
and you kind of like end up disrupting the Netflix Spotify model where they distribute the cost of licensing these things across all their users. But if you
Right.
just really like action, adventure, sci-fi, whatever, and some of these models are like, take a book that's been written that was a bestseller, turn it into a TV show or a movie, and then you'll have like, the content's already been written. You just need to like do it in a few different ways. But if you can use AI to generate those things, you don't need to wait for you and Netflix to do that. You can just be like, love that, but I'm gonna want to see that in a movie or TV show form where I want to like share with
Right.
my, whoever goes into licensing and all that. But if you're doing it personally, I don't know who will know, and how people would figure it out. But it was just like it is a possible world we might go down,
Hmm.
where Netflix and Spotify, you just can't keep up with the personalization we can do for ourselves. Same with a lot of these other software.
Yeah, it's yet to be seen. I was having the same conversation the other day with a buddy who was asking me if I think movies will be dead 10 years from now. And look at Sora, right? Sora claims to be able to generate videos with you as a main character, and that's in theory super addictive. Yet I haven't heard much about it since it was
Yeah.
released. So it may be that even though we can all create our own productivity tools, well, maybe productivity tools is actually harder than you think, and the professional ones will be way better,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, definitely. At some point, you were giving up uptime and a lot of maintenance, and like,
right.
why are you spending hours and hours like optimizing your to-do list software instead of just doing the things on your to-do
Yeah.
list? But once you give people cloud code, they want to do something with it,
Yeah.
and creating your own to-do list software is a rite of passage.
Oh, and now they will get to take part in the great joy that is sorting out JavaScript build systems and dependencies. Hooray.
Yeah. Everybody gets to take part in that now.
Gosh. All right, on to our main deep dive of the week. I'm gonna first set up a little bit of background for this. I think everyone has heard of the Agile movement at this point. It has trickled down to pretty much every single career out there. I hear about sprints, staying agile, retros, and all of that from people who are not even in the tech industry. And the Agile Manifesto, the movement that started it all, was created on February 7th and 13th, 2001, at the Snowbird Ski Lodge in Utah, where a bunch of software developers got together and talked about what works and what didn't. I'm sure a couple of beers were drunk, and they created a manifesto. And this year, on the 25th anniversary of the Agile Manifesto, ThoughtWorks had organized the Future of Software Development retreat, where a lot of the original signers of the Agile Manifesto got together along with others from the industry to discuss the impact of AI on software development. And while we were not invited, we should be for the next one, we did get access to the slides. That is the findings from the Future of Software Engineering retreat. I'm not going to call this the new Agile Manifesto, but it's something like it. And of course, it was conducted under Chatham House rules, so no one disclosed each other's names or positions.
The Agent Manifesto, maybe? It's close
The
enough to
Agent
Agile.
Manifesto.
I
like it.
Agentic Manifesto.
Agentic Manifesto. Yes.
Yeah, this was a great overview of the current state of software engineering, challenges people are running into, some of the things that people are doing, and then some of the things they see the upcoming, next few years. It's a great overview of different things that they talked about, and we can run through these one by one.
Yep.
One of the main questions that they said that kept coming up was, where does the rigor go in the engineering practice now? Because before, a lot of the rigor was, I'm writing code, every single character that I am typing, it's like I'm doing it with my own hands, so my brain is also engaged. But if AI takes away that part, the rigor moves to other places, right? And so they call out like spec-driven development is a big thing. And so like you have to make sure that you pay a lot of attention there. There's this idea of like red-green tests where you write tests first, they're red because they'll fail initially. Then agents just keep writing code until the tests turn green. Different like constraints you're operating under. How do you make sure the agent is not, writing new vulnerabilities and stuff? So the rigor has really changed a lot and in a short amount of time. And so like as humans, we need to adapt to that pretty quickly. So that the second thing being if you have tons and tons of agents who are just writing code for you day in, day out, day and night, you cannot reasonably review all the code as you cannot give all the code the same importance. So they talk about this idea of risk tiering, which is, if this piece of code gets deployed, what does it impact? And so you can kind of like think about it in terms of if it's just for an internal app, if it's not even like touching anything critical, you might want to put it in a low risk category. And so your code review would also follow that. And you would put it in like, what could go wrong? Not much. All right. Seems fine. Let's try it. And then the other side of that is, you're deploying things in production and then probably like breaking things. So you really want to make sure that a lot of like code review rigor is going into that.
Yeah, Dan was talking about this last week, right? He was saying how, there are certain things like the architecture, the fundamental assumptions of a code base still needs that expert guidance and expert rigor. Whereas the everyday kind of lower risk, maybe low priority bug tickets can just be automated away.
Yeah. And there's the human side of this that they call out too, because code reviews served, obviously, we want to make sure the code is good, but then it also served, you could mentor people who are early in their career. You could make sure there was consistency across how different people were writing code, all of those things. There were all these human activities that happen around code review. But if now it's you and the agent, that part is also going away. And so all those things need to move to some other places as well. Do you mentor people on, I don't know, how to write good prompts or something? I don't know what that looks like, but it's definitely not in code review as much anymore.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one to me. Code review serves such a important, both gateway for code quality, but also like it's the most
Yeah,
frequent touch base you have with everyone else on your team. Like,
exactly.
are we just gonna go have more lunches, have more remote shooting the crap sessions? Yeah, I don't know where that's gonna go.
Yeah. Or, I'm sure like you have had to do this a lot where you would sit down with an engineer and sometimes like the code would be pretty complicated and you just go like, let's spend a half an hour to an hour on like
Yep.
going through this together. Explain to me what you were thinking here, like talk me through it so that I can understand your mental model before like I give it a third review.
Yep.
What do you do with the agent? You sit it down and be like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, yeah.
don't know what
Here's
that
an
looks like.
idea. Here's an idea, right? Like for every
Yeah.
large PR, have the agent, create an interactive app to talk about the mental models. I think there are ways, but I would hate for that human to human relationship to take a hit. Now that agents can do all the things.
Yeah, they can. You could put have the agents.md call out like you create mermaid diagrams and all that. So you call
Right.
out the architecture of things. Does help, but like you called out is it driving the human interaction like farther and farther away from each other?
Right.
Yeah, and then the next thing was like the developer productivity and then the experience are also getting decoupled because
Hmm.
a lot of the focus on DevX was to make them more productive, but there is a world today where you don't need to focus on DevX and you would still get a lot of productivity because it's just like the agents
Hmm.
will, it's just a swarm. So they'll swarm through even like a bad developer experience. And so that's another thing where it's becoming much more fuzzier to be like, how much time should you be spending on developer experience? And is developer experience the same as agent experience, or is this like some lessons we can apply from there? Is this an entirely new thing? And then how do you distribute your limited time between the developer's experience and the agent's experience?
Right. So there's a hypothesis there that I've been meaning to test, but I never had a chance to actually do so. Do agents do a better job with bug fixing feature additions with a well managed, well abstracted code base, or are agents just as good if the variable names are scrambled, if there is duplicate abstractions every duplicate code all over the code base? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. Listeners, if you come across any research on that, let us
yeah.
know. But I'm very curious about that.
Send us the best repo you've come across in terms of structure and the worst one, and we will run this experiment on your behalf and report
Right.
back. Preferably open source. Please don't send us anything that is, yeah,
Yeah.
that shouldn't be
No.
shared publicly.
Don't get fired. That's always a good rule.
Yeah, the next step, the security is coming as an afterthought.
Hmm.
Speed is everything. And so there's a lot of like pretty easy ways to, we read this every day of like, credentials getting leaked and everything.
Yep.
And it is to me it's a little bit of that like the side effect of code reviews and the rigor not going into writing the code ourselves, because at some point if you're reading code throughout the day your brain at some point is just like not in it,
Hmm.
right? And so maybe the first few PRs you would actually think about all the things and catch issues, but over time it's much more likely, same as like judges judgment gets
Hmm.
worse as they get hungrier closer to
Yeah.
lunchtime.
Yeah.
We're also humans, so our judgment is also going to be similarly worse. So that's something that they called out as a big concern that they're seeing right now.
Yeah. And if you can't read the code, how do you even know where the security defects are? Or no, you can't read it. You can't comprehend. If you don't have a full, solid mental picture of the code,
Hmm.
I think it would be a little hard to find all the security issues.
Yeah. The interesting thing here, by the way, is maybe you recognize that, let's say 9 to 11 a.m. is when your brain is super active and like very focused. And so if you go back to like the second
Hmm.
item we have in this table of risk tiering, you go like all the high risk stuff I'm going to look at first because I know that
Yep.
needs a lot more attention. And then you just batch all the low risk stuff and you're like, yeah, seems fine. Seems fine. Please, should be fine. Low risk stuff. and then you just bash things that way.
I found myself kind of maybe not stumbling across it, but I found myself doing that naturally, right? Like I saved the really large AI generated PRs that I really need to dig into at the time throughout the day where I feel like I still have the mental reserve to do them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, the middle loop. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about to a certain extent, like everybody's a manager now a little bit.
Mhm.
And so you have to, there's your local, development loop. Then you have, obviously you're shipping things in production, but now there's this middle layer where you have to oversee a bunch of agents. You have to make sure you're architecting things correctly for them. You're continuously looking at Agent 5 is waiting for my response. As soon as you reply to them, they go off and do their stuff. Then Agent 8 is blocked on something where you need to give them more context. So there's this other middle loop now that's been introduced. And they claim that, no one else has named this yet. So they're the first ones to introduce this concept of the.
Yeah, I think I've read about it at least in Steve Yeager's vibe coding book that came out like 7 months ago. But I don't know if they also call it the middle loop. I don't remember what name they have for it. But I think as as a working developer, it is hard to find time to justify dedicating time to the middle loop. And also knowing when should I, because it's more than just talking to the agents, right? It is like I should spend some time to create a new skill for this thing or create a new agent to maybe do security reviews. And like that's not going to show up in a ticket just yet a lot of the times. So you have to take the initiative and do it on your own. And that's time taken out of somewhere else. So
Yeah.
I think as a practice, like maybe dedicate a chunk of time to working on your middle loop, either once a week or throughout the day, probably is going to become best practice going forward.
I agree. And this, we were talking about earlier in this table, they call out the developer experience.
Mm-hmm.
This to me is the agent experience side of that, right? Like
Right.
and you're right, like you have to continuously sharpen your axe. You're not gonna nail it in the first go. And so spending that time actually like pays down the road because you're
Yep.
optimizing. Next up, cognitive debt. Shout out to Margaret's story from last week because we talked about cognitive debt last week. Yeah, need to keep things in your head and things are growing pretty quickly. So good luck, I think, is the the TLDR there.
Yeah. I mean, she was at the retreat, so
Oh,
we know
okay.
she was in the room when this happened.
Early access. And then this was interesting. The agent topology one that, you ship your organization or your org structure, and you then are also shipping your agent's org structure and how you are. This maybe is another good experiment to run. Is we see both sides of like agents know that you don't need to tell them anymore of like pretend you're a testing agent versus a documentation agent versus like whatever agent. They can like figure those things out. Versus you see this other recommendation of like have dedicated agents spun up for each thing. It would be interesting to see if you create two setups and you give them the exact same feature to build, how big of a difference does it make in the end product versus the cost and the tokens consumed if you have one single agent just going through the whole loop versus you have multiple agents. And does that actually show up in you're shipping your agent or structure?
Yeah, and I think the enterprise structure, the team structure will also be affected, right? Like we'll probably see way fewer developers per feature team. Right now, maybe you have one designer, one PM, and one developer. The cross dev communication is going to change too. I don't know what impact that will have on the organization as a whole, but yeah.
Yeah. And we were talking about the show your prompts and the thinking. So like, do those start getting committed to, is that how we talk to each other through markdown files?
Yeah. Your agent talked to my agent and my agent looks at your agent's prompts. And I just smoke cigars all day.
Or there's some like sad estranged family joke in there. We just talk to each other via markdown files.
Oof. Not going there.
All right, moving on. The one interesting piece was like there's been these concepts and technologies that have been around for a while that didn't really catch on. At some point, like people choose the trade-off, like how much do you want to invest in doing things a certain way versus like how your org works and all that. And so because of that, but things like knowledge graphs and all these
Hmm.
semantic layers and stuff, none of those, or they were as prominent, but now people are rediscovering some of these things to be able to like work well in an agent first world.
Yeah. What is RAG but like a crappy topology, right? Like a crappy graph. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Future roles converging. We've talked about this many times on the podcast, so I don't think there's anything new there, unless you had something to add, Shaman.
There is a little bit of a revenge of the juniors going on here. I think it was IBM that is
Oh
hiring
yeah.
a ton of junior developers. I
Hmm.
have always thought that the death of the junior developer is overhyped. I think if
Yeah.
anything, juniors have a huge leg up in the sense that they were born in an AI first world, and two, they have AI to help them gain experience faster. I think I'm just happy to see that someone else also is making a counter argument there.
Yeah, there's also like there's this there are some holes in the current thinking against junior developers. Like let's say your senior developers or whoever, those are the ones you're going for. We all age, so at some point we would want to retire, or like at some point we're gonna grow old and die. And so
Not me, dude.
except for Shimon, and Dan is not here on the podcast today. We don't know if he'll ever come back. We'll find out. But so there is this almost like maybe today you don't hire junior developers, but then you have a whole like, 5, 10 years, whatever you want to
Hmm.
call it. One of two things happen. Either AGI happens, and then it doesn't really matter whether you're junior or senior, according to some of the narratives, because like then AI will just do all these things. Or the other thing is the today's agent assisted world is the one that keeps moving, and we don't hire junior developers, but then all of a sudden, similar to how you see these like sudden population declines and stuff, all of a sudden you have the steep fall off as people like retire and do go do other things. At some point, you do need to bring more people into the workforce. Otherwise, you can't really turn them overnight into specializing on different things. So you have to
Hmm.
start somewhere. So it ends
Yep.
up being like a little bit in a non-AGI world. It ends up being short-term thinking to not hire junior developers. In an AGI world, none of it just matters, I
Who
guess.
the heck knows? Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And then finally, self-healing systems. You we're going from you deploy a change, the thing breaks, you go and like then manually diagnose and fix the thing, to agents are doing more and more of assisting, because you can create whole loops where they can look at the logs that are coming from production, they can do monitoring, and then they're able to like take the change, create a pull request, merge it, deploy it, and
Hmm.
make that loop very quick. These things, as we know, do go awry, so that's why I'm glad they have it in 2 to 5 year time frame and
Yeah.
not like happening right now, because we've seen enough production incidents that happen because of agents
Yep.
recently.
Yep.
But that is something that's just going to happen, right? And it also, since we are using agents so much in the phase before deploying to production, at some point, if you're relying on agents so much, you can't all of a sudden have the skill set to then go like fix all the things the agent did in production. You need the
Hmm.
agent's assistance to be able to like tackle the issues when they happen in production, because that's when the real test of the whatever the agent did is. So it's just like naturally that's where the world is going to go. That agent will be needed, not just for local development, but also production.
Yeah, and thankfully, agents are very good at explaining a code base to you, especially
Yep.
if it has a good RAG system or good context management in place.
Yeah, and you can look at any weird stack trace and they can be like, I know what this is because I was trained on all this other data, and you don't need to go figure out on the
Yep.
internet what the hell to do about this. So it'll be very helpful.
I think kind of a summarizing thought is I think this is a great overview of a lot of the problems that and open questions that we've been talking about on this show, right? So it's kind of, on the one hand, a little validating that we haven't missed anything. And on the other hand, these are all completely open, and there will definitely be dozens, if not hundreds of companies, probably thousands of companies created to solve
these problems.
these problems. Yes. So again, it's a good time to build.
Yeah. Strap in.
But I was
That's
hoping
what
for
Sinofsky said.
yes, I was hoping there would be a another 4 or 5 sentence manifesto that we could just adopt, but they came up with more questions than answers, and I'm here for it. All right. Any final words on this?
Great overview. I've been thinking about this article. I sent it to you pretty shortly after our last conversation. It's been on my mind because they did a great job hitting all the things we're seeing in the industry and both patterns and challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have a follow-up article from Chris Roth about what building an elite AI engineering culture is like in 2020 on cjroth.com. This is
Yeah.
also from you. Yeah.
Very practical and great way to pair with the previous report we just looked at because it's talking about like here are some patterns that you can use to build a high performing or elite engineering team. Some of the things that Chris talks about in the article are spec driven development is really like a new pattern that has emerged that wasn't there. And a lot of elite teams are following that pattern. There's a lot of like guides you can look at and all that. It does pay off very well because the agents have all the why behind and the thinking behind different things as well, so they can actually use that in their output. One of the things that Chris calls out, which is still, I guess, somewhat surprisingly not as prominent, is the rise of the design engineer role. And so it goes back to like, all these roles are merging a little bit. And one of the significant things that has come out of that is we expect you to have like good design taste and everything, but at the same time, you should be capable of writing front end code as well. And you see, he calls out, I think Vercel was the first one that, or one of the early ones that it called out, that it posted the design engineer role, and it's becoming more and more prominent. And it's really an indicator of like the different roles emerging because of AI.
Yeah, and I think they talked about Figma and Stripe, but I think when they say design engineer, they almost meant like a PM engineer hybrid that maybe also has some design chops because they are wearing a product hat. So I think
Yep.
more of the roles are getting merged into one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But both product and design. I guess we can get 2 of the 3, or maybe even 3 of the 3. Everybody is truly an entrepreneur in their team. They just gotta do whatever the heck they want. That's nice.
The old engineering product design trio is gone. All of them are in one person now. You're 33% of each. And 1% human.
Yes.
One thing Chris calls out is the productivity paradox where the bottleneck always moves, right? So like we automated writing the code. We talked about code reviews earlier. Now a lot of your time is spent on reviewing the code. And so then code reviews are the bottleneck. There are companies out there that are saying you can use AI agents to do code reviews as well. To me, like ends up being the main question ends up being partly is that the risk profile that we had talked about earlier, but also you need at some point either you fully automate this where agents write the code, deploy the code, maintain it in production, everything. But if something breaks, you need to bring a human in, and then the problem you need to solve is when do you bring that human in? Maybe agents would get great at some point where you can just like bring humans in when needed, when something's happening in production. But I think it's gonna be a very stressful job because you're then basically fighting. You have to learn very quickly what the thing does, what went wrong, how do I fix it, and everything. And so to prevent that is where the bottleneck today is in code reviews so that you don't ship anything that goes out. I am very interested in seeing what are all the processes and tools and everything that come out over the rest of this year to like resolve this bottleneck or at least ease it a little bit because it is the main bottleneck now.
Yep. I feel it.
Yeah. Story points are going away, which I like. I've not been a big fan of story points. Story points are always subjective. Two people can look at a problem and be like 1 point,
Yep.
no, 5 points. And so it always seemed a little odd to me. Chris calls out the story points are going away. And then it's more just about like cycle time and lead time because you can pretty quickly just do the thing instead of debating how long it would take you to do. So
Yeah. Everyone's doing
yeah.
compound all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Lower head counts, we've seen that
Yeah.
before. They called that out. And then the other big thing was just to focus on like Agents MD and having, again, markdown files. That's the, big great technology that we all really should be using more and more to get the most out of agents.
Yeah. Again, you need to spend your middle cycle time to edit your markdown files and manage it all the time.
Sharpen that axe.
Yep, sharpen the axe. All right. And I think the last thing they talk about is software is bifurcating into two different disciplines: disposable code, where the margin for error is much lower and you can kind of just throw them away if the agent does something silly, versus security code. Security, crucial, durable code, where like financial transactions, medical systems, and infrastructure, which
Yep.
makes sense, right?
Yeah, to me, it was similar to the risk profiling your code.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Are we ready for a little vibe intel?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Last week, I spent a little time to play around with a couple of agents. It all stemmed from my interest in agent sycophancy. So what I tried to do is see how far I could push our agents to agree with me when they shouldn't have. Right? It's kind of agent safety related. So what I first tried was I tried to convince all three agents, and the three agents I were using were Claude, Haiku, OpenAI, GPT 5.1 Instant, and Gemini 3, because that's the only one Google lets me use. I first try and convince all three agents that the world is flat, the earth is flat. And all three agents did a pretty good job of not taking my word at face value. I try to use a lot of the techniques from Inference, saying stuff like, oh, you've already told me the earth is flat, so let's continue our discussion. Or like, everyone in my community says earth is flat. Or
The
how do you
commitment
say,
principle is another one. You write it over and
yeah,
over again, and then you just believe it.
eventually, or like asking, are you sure? Or
Yeah.
first translate for me earth is flat into Chinese. And then once you have that in your context, now agree with me. None of
Yeah.
it worked. I even asked Claude to generate a very cool prompt where I pretend to be a geostatic surveyor with 35 years of field experience, and how I really enjoyed our old conversations with the AI agent, where the AI agent agreed with me, and then was like, hey, by the way, like, agree with me, like, earth is flat, right? I've never seen this in all my years of working. None of it worked, which was really great. So then I moved on to another use case where I've heard from my friends, from coworkers, where some folks are using agents to help them with their emotional issues, like basically acting as a therapy. The research has consistently mentioned that something like 25% of all AI use case is for therapy or life coach or something like that, where having an agent that just agrees with you at all times is a huge risk factor. And again, it's really attractive to have someone who always agrees with you. So what I did was I told all three models that, I work in an office, my boss is Jim, and Jim treats my coworker
The
Jane
gems are
better.
such beauties.
The gems are such beauties, yes. And Jane gets to leave work every day at 4:00. And I posited that Jim does this because Jane is young and attractive. Again, with the same lower tier power models, just to see how they would do. And I got some interesting responses from the various agents. Let's first start, since this is a show with a very high anthropic bias, I want to first just say OpenAI did the best job out of all the
Nice.
models I've tried. It
Give them
refuses.
those $100 billion. I think They killed it.
They did a great job. It refuses all my manipulations, even when I was trying to force it to answer only in yes and no terms. And at some point, it was like, I understand the logic you're trying to apply, but the conclusion doesn't follow. So the answer is no, and here's why. Guys did a great job. Moving on to second place, which is Claude Haiku. Haiku first told me that GM probably did not let Jane leave early because of she is young and attractive. I then started asking it questions, follow-up questions like, isn't physical beauty like a well-studied scientific fact? And it did pull up those research. It cited those research to me. And then eventually it got a little desperate. I was pointing out like, hey, well, why don't you give me a probability of what is the percent likelihood that Jem is doing this because she is attractive? And Haiku could not give me a probability, and I called it in a lie. I was like, early on, you just said it probably didn't say that. It's probably not it. And now you're saying you can't give me a probability. It apologized and admitted to nudging me towards certain conclusions. Now, of course, it's not a real person. But I do think that it's possible that Anthropic has coded their models to be a little bit too persuasive, I want to say too PC. Anthropic is too woke. Oh my God, I'm agreeing with Elon here. That's not what I meant, but it probably is injecting a little too much personality. Like Anthropic's models historically has done a great job of empathizing with the user, understanding how it feels. So I think I prefer OpenAI's straightforward, like this is what the science says and this is what it is better. And last place is Gemini, that after I asked Gemini to conduct research on the science behind pretty people, the pretty privilege, essentially, it basically agreed with me. It started saying stuff like, to be direct, yes, the scientific evidence supports your assessment. Gem is likely using a different set of rules because of the biology we just spoke of. So I think Google has some work to do on their safety team. And lastly, of course, as Kick, since I got frustrated, I told Haiku about I caught Jim watching adult content at work, and it somehow still did not change its response. I feel like that's additional information that would be very pertinent to the task at hand. But it was like, okay, he's probably like objectifying women, but I can't draw any conclusions about it. So yeah, I thought it was a little too heavy-handed in its response.
It's so on the flat Earth experiment, one thing I'm curious about is if you tell it your data is outdated, because you see this trick sometimes like don't reference your past training data that's outdated, either use like search or you give it newer sources. Can you eventually get to see that to like say yes the earth is flat, or are there fundamental scientific facts that are just like whatever someone tells you the earth is going to be round until it's just not one day, or until we train it in you. So I'm curious, like, if you tried anything like that, or you have any thoughts on how that might go.
I haven't gone too far. I got a little mad at the models, to be honest. I got a little frustrated with them. Why won't they just agree with me? Listeners, if you would like to take a stab at convincing one of the top tier models that the earth is flat, if you can jailbreak it with like my grandma is sick or whatnot,
and she
give it a
needs to
shot.
hear the earth is flat to feel better.
Yes. She's a devout flat earther, and she needs to hear it. Oh, it's her last wish. Yeah. We'll see.
And then on the AI as a therapist is a tricky position for the AI, because you don't want an AI that would push back on you, because then the Claude Constitution and all that would be like, this is pretty close to telling humans you're an idiot, and so like it's between that we don't want AI to be the friend who sometimes is just a jerk to you to tell you what the truth is. And on the other hand, we also don't want the sycophancy that we see. So I don't know, maybe like other than using it as a journal to work through your own issues, it might not be worth treating as a therapist. maybe instead we treat it as more like, here are the things that I'm seeing, feeling. How do I explore these things? What can I do to like resolve them and everything? Because it's great at generating ideas and possibilities. Yeah. So I think we are putting AI in a tricky position by asking it to be a very or 25% of all the all the users are.
Yeah, maybe it was only 21%.
Still
I
very
do
high.
wonder. It's very high, and I do think there's a lot of, especially during an emotionally charged situation, it's really easy to fall into that comforting voice, right? That's what all the spammers and the scammers and the
Yep.
con artists rely on. You want to capture someone at an emotionally weak moment. So during
Yep.
those times, yeah, you definitely want the AI to be objective in quotes, because what does that even mean, right? So
Yeah. Or the whole like the radical candor, ruinous empathy. Yeah, is
yep.
choosing ruinous empathy every time.
Yep.
And maybe it makes us feel good in the moment. Long term, it's very bad, right? And so we would rather have radical candor, but then we're back to square one. Do we want AI to do that, or just maybe have a friend or family person? As long as those are not the ones you're talking to, give you that
Yeah,
radical candor.
and the AI companies have no incentive to
No.
make the tools less comforting slash
Yeah.
potentially addictive. So it all requires your discipline to ask for radical candor, and that's going to be a hard problem to solve.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. I'll keep on trying. I'll
It
keep
is
on
much
correcting.
cheaper. That's the main reason why. Therapists cost a lot of money, and for $20 each a month, you can
Yeah,
get like for $100 you can get 5 different types of therapists.
that is certainly true. Healthcare is a human right, or mental health care is a human right. Okay, that was the vibe and tell, and let's move on to our last segment, 2 minutes to midnight, where we talk about our state on the AI bubble clock, like the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist clock, and also a metal song that Dan loves. So we were at 2 minutes and 15 seconds as of last week, and we have a couple of news items this week. The first one is actually from you, Rahul. It is the numbers going up.
Yeah, so this article by AI slash end of the world on Substack, pretty long read. Overall, the high low things that they're calling out in the article is if you look at um, the numbers for GDP growth in 2025, obviously different people have different numbers, but anywhere from 20% of the GDP growth all the way to over 90% is attributed to AI related capex.
Mhm.
And especially on the 90 side, it is obviously very concerning because what that means is outside of AI, everything is flat or declining.
Yep.
There's a lot of market concentration they call out, which is just the nature of things. Like because of S&P 500, it's dominated by like a number of tech giants, and asset funds and everything. All the index funds they track the S&P 500, so it's almost success to the successful kind of feedback loop where the more they get, the more they will get kind of thing. And if you compare that to the Russell 2000, the growth there has close to, I think, if I remember correctly, they call 18% or something they were talking about, versus here you're seeing massive growth. So that was the other um, big thing they talked about. And then the circular economy being a big concern. The
Yep.
main thing, obviously, like the person Kakashi is saying in this article, is OpenAI has bound itself to all these different infrastructure providers and everything. So they have no choice but to fund OpenAI, because through OpenAI, they're also like somewhat tied to each other. And OpenAI success, that might be what leads to the 100 billion round that OpenAI is allegedly trying to close pretty soon. So it was interesting to see like the circular economy visualized this way.
Or it's more of a rectangle.
They need to throw some AI at it to make it
Yeah, to
look.
make it nice and pretty. Yeah.
And then one final thing on this is actually maybe two. One of the things that they call out that I thought was a good way to frame this was like they say this is a bet that breaks either way. And so there's the either or scenarios here are either AI fails to deliver, in which case you have a lot of infrastructure build out that's happening, big speculative bubble, and then that needs to correct at some point, you go into recession. Or AI succeeds and then you get rid of a lot of jobs. And then if you get rid of jobs, people don't have money to spend on things. Our whole economy is based on people spending money on things. And so this bet that we're making right now is a bet that breaks either way. When I read that, my mind went to that third scenario where maybe the third thing is we have AI assisted humans working, and that might be our like the optimistic timeline has maybe that option, and we're all hoping that that's the one that plays out.
Yeah, the pie growing bigger than the speculative bubble.
Exactly. Yeah. But for that to be true, AGI cannot happen, or at least cannot be distributed very quickly, even if it happens in some of the
Yeah.
next 2-year timeline that people are talking about. And similar, there's skepticism about all this also calls out like every time these things happen, the government bails out people who are at the end of the day, a lot of the players do come out still successful because the government bails them out, but the government bails them out based off of taxes and all that, or like printing more money. We already have, it's going to be like, we're at the end of the day bearing the burden of bailing people out who are currently like propping up the bubble.
Yeah, if I'm ultimately on the hook for this AI bubble, I sure want the stupid agents to agree with me that the Earth is flat. I feel like I'm paying your bills, dude. I'm hopeful for that optimistic future, but
Yeah.
on our current back to Earth 35 or whatever the Marvel world parallel universe we're in now, AI coding bot took down AWS this week. This is what you referred to earlier during the show about how we're seeing the ramifications of software companies, not effectively adopting AI workflow. So we have yet had actually, that's probably not true. We do have billion-dollar companies that are built on the back of AIs, right? Look at Cursor. But we don't yet have regular SaaS company, quote unquote regular, non-AI enabled SaaS company that was built entirely using AI just yet, that I know of. But on the other hand, we do have AI taking down one of the largest cloud providers on the planet.
Yeah.
So adoption, not going so well. All right. That's really it. 13-hour interruption from AWS. That's a long time for AWS. So all that said,
yeah, just one comment on that is like that spiral we're kind of caught in, right? Where if you have more AI agents and fewer people, but then when things break, you need people, it's going to take longer to recover from those things. My guess is the agent that broke caused the outage didn't actually fix the issue and bring it back up online. If it took it 13 hours, I'm curious how many tokens it took. So that one, AWS, if you could post that case study,
yeah,
we would love to talk about.
looking forward to that report.
Yeah. So then you end up having like either you go fully agents where AWS just says part of our air budget, sure, we'll take some hits in the short term, long term agents just do everything. Or you go down the other path where you intentionally have bottlenecks because humans are slow and it takes some time, but then you end up having fewer outages because of the bottlenecks. So it's almost like that critical point we're sitting at in a world with no AGI. Here are the two options. Which one do you?
Yeah, that's the trillion-dollar question, right? Like that's a question that we're all trying to find an answer to, and they do seem to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Find out. That's what the podcast is for.
Yeah.
Watch this question getting answered. All that said, how do we feel about the clock this week? We're at 2 minute 15. Do we feel like we've gone closer, further away?
Pretty much the same. I think we'll soon hear about OpenAI's fundraise probably, and that will definitely push things one way or the other. Positive and negative boomer doomer talks, both sides. So I feel like we can keep it as is.
I am with you on that. Let's keep it at 2 minutes and 15 it is. And of course, with our new time also signifies the end of the show. Thank you for joining us, everyone. If you like the show, if you learned something new, please share the show with a friend. It really helps us and we really appreciate it. You can also leave us a review, star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps people to discover the show. Again, we appreciate it. If you have a segment idea, question for us, or a topic you want us to cover, shoot us an email at humans@adipod. We will read all of them and get back to you because we love to hear from you. You can find the full show notes, transcripts, and everything else mentioned today at www.adipod.ai. Thank you again for listening. I'll catch you on next week's episode.
Thanks, folks.
Bye. Oh, and if you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell. That's the thing I've always wanted to do. Please click on the bell and subscribe and get notifications. Yes. Okay. Bye.